Well, Merry Christmas, my friends. There's a side of me that's almost hesitant to greet you with those words following a song like that so powerfully reminds us of the pain in this world that we're celebrating Christmas. The pain is not only in the world, it's in this room. It's all of you who are participating over the internet. The reality is we live in a world filled with pain, suffering, disappointment, agony. And so to come and say, hey, Merry Christmas, everybody, it almost sounds like, really? Merry? Joy at Christmas? Is that even a thing? Is it really possible to be filled with a merry heart, a joy in this world that is so hard? Friends, I believe that it is. I am convinced that Merry Christmas is right on, that there is a joy that can be had. But I'm also convinced the only way to have it is to access this word, this concept that I want to study with you called hope. Hope, it's a relatively short word, only 4 letters and easy to overlook, at least the way this world understands hope. But I'm telling you, the Christian understanding of hope is powerful. It's a dynamic that changes everything. You get in touch with hope and look out, no matter how bad it gets. Hope reminds us that there's more to the story, that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that the best is yet to come. Hope, the lifestyle of hope, can infuse those living in really difficult lives with a joy that they never saw coming. So I'm praying for hope for you. I'm praying that this lifestyle, I call it a lifestyle. I wonder if the way you live is marked, is characterized by hope. I'm praying that it'll become that. Maybe through this service, the Lord will help you understand what hope is, help you pursue it, help you get it, help you live it, help you enjoy it. Because Christmas, it's all about hope. Do you realize that? That is what this event we've come to celebrate centers on. In fact, not only is Christmas all about hope, but the date that we celebrate Christmas is all about hope. You do know the date of Christmas, right? It's kind of tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, which would be December the 25th. And, you know, the kids would say, that's Jesus' birthday. And now I'm going to ruin Christmas for you all. We don't know what day Jesus was born on. The reality of it is that for 300 years, the early Christians didn't celebrate Christmas. I mean, the scriptures tell us that he was born and the events surrounding his birth, but no date is given in the Bible. Early Christians celebrated Good Friday, the day Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and the day he resurrected on Easter. But they didn't celebrate Christmas until like 325 AD, when Christianity became legalized in the Roman Empire. In fact, it became the official religion of the Roman Empire, and these enthusiastic Christians were like, we need more Christian holidays. How about the birth of Jesus? Let's celebrate that one. And everyone's like, yeah. Well, when are we going to do it? They picked December 25th to celebrate the birth of Christ. And the reason they picked December 25th is because they were trying to pick the winter solstice. Now, they were a little off. As we know, it's the 21st. But science and technology weren't as precise as they are today, so they were close, but a little off. Nonetheless, the reason they picked winter solstice is that the people of their day loved winter solstice. There was already a huge pagan festival on winter solstice. The people back then saw the drama. You know, they didn't have TV and movies, so they were looking for drama where they could find it. And in the winter solstice, they found the drama. I understand. I'm one of those nerds who really gets into the winter solstice. When I get there, like, yeah, shortest day of the year. We're over the hump, baby. It's all good from here. And I know most of you actually are like, what are you talking about? But there's some who understand. Let me try to get you into this celebration of the winter solstice as great drama. I'd like you to pretend that you are new to planet Earth, all right? You've never lived a whole calendar year here. You don't know the dynamics of the sun and how it works. All you know is that you've been here for a number of months now, and you happen to know the daylight is getting shorter every day. This is a concerning trend to you. You're like, hey, friends, do you notice that the sun was up a little bit less today than yesterday? And tomorrow, I'm pretty sure it's going to be up less again. And beyond the days getting shorter, I'm noticing that the sun back in the summer, used to rise high at noon. It would be way up overhead. But as we progress now, I'm seeing that the sun at the peak of the day, it's getting lower and lower in the horizon with each passing day. This is a troubling trend. You know, if you're new to the earth, you would say, I've watched it steadily moving in this direction, and there's no reason to anticipate this trend is not going to continue, which would leave us all in a frozen, dark death. But do we panic about that trend? Not at all. Why? Because of winter solstice, we know that though the sun at its peak each day is getting lower and lower and lower and lower, but on December 21st, it's called solstice because sol means sun and stis is stasis or stay. It stops and it doesn't get any lower. In fact, after that, the trend is reversed and the sun is returning in all of its life-giving glory. It's saving the day. It's a good story of rescue, of hope. In fact, you say, yeah, but how do you celebrate December 21st as it's all going to get better when the truth is the worst months are yet to come, you know? Do you know why that is? Do you know why January and February are colder if the sun is actually on its return? I'll tell you why. This thing called the seasonal lag. The months before the winter solstice are relatively mild because of the heat stored up in the earth, the dirt, the ground, the water, the oceans. And it takes a while for the diminishing sun to cool those bodies of earth. And once they have, then we really feel it afterwards. And it takes a while for the sun to heat up the waters in the earth again. So we get like a 2-month lag. But that's fun. That speaks of hope too. Because now you'll remember this and you'll say, you know, in January and February when we get this wicked cold and the wind is swirling, the snow's falling, I'll just remember this. The rescue of the sun is already in motion. It's coming. It's happening. And that's a message of hope. Friends, so the early pagans, loved the winter solstice because of the drama it represented. They had a huge festival. You know what they called their festival on December 25th? They called it, here's Latin for you, Natalis Sol Invicti, which means birth of the invincible sun. And the Christians were like, we need a day to celebrate the birth of Jesus. Boom, December 25th. And the Christians stole it from the pagans. We'll take that day, thank you. We'll still call it the birth of the invincible sun, but it's a celebration of the birth of Jesus Christ, because to a dark world, Christ is the light who has come to bring warmth and rescue. Oh, how beautiful is the message of hope wrapped up in Christmas. So the date of Christmas speaks of hope. Here's a woman from the Bible who speaks of hope. She's a character of the Christmas drama. Her name is Anna. She didn't get a lot of attention. My guess is your nativity set doesn't have a little Anna figurine there. But Anna was there. She was one of the few who got to meet the infant baby Jesus and recognize him as the coming Messiah. So now let me read to you. Luke 2, verse 36 tells us about Anna. Anna was very old. Anybody else very old? No, you don't have to say that. No. Her husband died when they had been married only 7 years. And then she lived as a widow to the age of 84. Friends, back in Anna's day, girls got married really young, like 15 or 16 years old. And assuming she was like the rest, let's say 15 years old, that means she became a widow at the age of 22 and never found a husband for remarriage. What a sad story. Here's a woman who had hoped for a life filled with romantic love and to death do us part long into their old age, but not so. She lived in loneliness and poverty, I would add. Widows back in the early days were known to just be penniless. And so Anna's got a very sad story. Lonely, penniless, hard times. Outside of her personal woes, everybody in Israel was going through a hard time back then. They were a conquered people. The Roman Empire had wiped their government out and placed this guy named Herod in control of their region. And Herod taxed them ruthlessly and oppressed the people, just took advantage of them. So poor Anna, she's got everything going against her. You would assume she would be bitter at God. You would assume she would turn her back on God and say, my life is so terrible, therefore I'm mad at you. But turning her back on God is the last thing she did. You won't believe this. Let me read. Verse 37 continues. She never left the temple, but stayed there day and night, worshiping God with fasting and prayer. And Anna didn't turn her back on God, no. Every time the temple was open, day or night, she was there, and she was there with gusto, worshiping and celebrating her love and affection for God. And you're like, wow, I didn't see that coming. I didn't anticipate her just being thrilled in that way, having so much joy in the Lord. How do you reconcile this woman who's got this immense hardship and this incredible joy? Well, let's read the story and see if we can figure it out. It says in verse 38, she came along just as Simeon, now you're like, who is he? Just as Simeon was talking with Mary and Joseph, and she began praising God. So let me give you the context. Simeon is another guy who, like Anna, loves the Lord and is given by the Holy Spirit this unique capacity to sense Jesus. He just looks like an ordinary baby, but when these two see him, they say, that's the Messiah. They know it, and they rejoice when no one else does. Simeon, he came along. He found Mary and Joseph and the baby. They were there at the temple to dedicate Christ, who was only a few weeks old. But Simeon said, that's him. And the Bible says Simeon took Jesus. He was so excited. Now, Anna comes walking up at this moment. Now, I'm going to say something that's not in the text, but I think I'm right. Anna came up and grabbed baby Jesus out of Simeon's arms and said, give me the baby. It doesn't say that, but that's what I see women do in our lobby all the time, give me the baby. And so Anna held this baby Jesus and just said, he's so precious. This is the long-awaited Messiah. And she rejoiced, and then look what she did next. Anna talked about the child to everyone who had been waiting expectantly for God to rescue his people. Anna called together a group of people that she knew because they were temple regulars also. And she says, I got somebody for you to meet. Come here, I got to tell you about this child. And who were those people? Let's highlight these lines. They were those waiting expectantly for God to rescue his people. Isn't that a beautiful definition of hope? You want to know what hope is? There you go. It's those who have hope are those who wait expectantly for God to rescue his people. And this provides me a moment to bring some clarity. A lot of times in our culture, when people think of hope, they think of like wishful thinking, like, well, I hope it happens. And it's just kind of wistful. No, Christian hope is rock solid confidence that it's going to happen. I mean, God had promised my Messiah's coming, and they were waiting expectantly. They knew it. It's just a matter of time, and when, I don't know, and how, I don't know, but he's coming. And we who have Christian hope, it's not just wishful thinking. It is rock solid confidence that the God who promised will be true to that promise. It's just a matter of time before the rescue comes. He's coming. He's going to show his goodness. In fact, King David, back in Psalm 23, verse 6, King David had said, he said, I will surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life. And then when I die, David said, then I'm going to be in the house of the Lord forever. Do you see the confidence David had? He's like, when I look to the future, I just know it. God's goodness, It's going to show up in the days ahead. I don't know how, but I'm getting ready for it. God's goodness is on its way. And God's love, oh, he's going to love on me in the days ahead in extraordinary ways. And then when I die, it even gets better. When I die, that's when I enter heaven, this place that is the perfected world. It's the restored world as it was meant to be. And David just had this excitement, as did Anna, saying, I know it's tough, but this ain't the end of the story. The best is yet to come. That's what I like calling the thrill of hope. You know, that's the way we entitled this Christmas celebration. The thrill of hope. That comes out of an old Christmas carol. Do you remember which one? It comes out of Oh Holy Night. This carol is almost 2 centuries old, and yet the profoundness of the language is just remarkable. A thrill. What is a thrill? A thrill is joy, like really excited joy. Joy resulting from hope. Do you know what that says? That says you can have a joy now in anticipation of blessing in the future. You don't have to wait to get there to enjoy the joy. You can have the joy now. And you say, how is that? Look at this line. The weary world rejoices. It's like Anna. Weary world, hard life people, rejoicing because of the thrill of hope. Look at this line. For yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. It's been a long, dark night, but in yonder, over the horizon, breaks a new and glorious morning sunrise. Friends, that brings a thrill of hope. I wonder if you could say, yeah, the thrill of hope, that's my life. I enjoy it all the time. I have got excitement today because of my confident anticipation of God's goodness in the days ahead. Do you know that scientists have actually demonstrated the power of the thrill of hope? No kidding. There were some psychologists who have done studies on how the future and the present relate to joy. One of them is Gregory Strauss of the University of Georgia, another Leif Van Boven of the University of Colorado. They each ran independent studies, but they were linked in this common pursuit. And look at what they did. They came up with 3 categories of pleasure. One linked to the past, one to the present, one to the future. The past they called nostalgic pleasure. This is what you will do with your family. You know, if you've got siblings from out of town who are in to celebrate, you're going to get together and you're going to laugh and tell stories of, remember what you did to me when we were kids? Do you remember that? And as you recall delightful moments of the past, nostalgic pleasure will just be your joy. Present pleasure, I love this, consumatory pleasure. You're going to, at Christmas, consume, and just consume and find pleasure in the present delights that you're consuming. And then there's the thrill of hope, which is future, anticipatory pleasure. Joy that comes from this conviction that the days ahead are going to be amazing. Do you know what the scientists discovered in their investigation? To their surprise, the most profound joy was brought through the future, anticipatory pleasure. Let's highlight that. This is the one that yielded the greatest pleasure. Those people who believed that the best is yet to come. You won't believe what's ahead. They were the ones that lived with the most dynamic and enduring joy. That makes sense, because if you don't have anticipatory pleasure, if you think my life stinks and it's going to get worse, that's called dread. And dread chases away all joy. But those who are convinced that the best is yet to come, scientists have demonstrated, find a joy unlike these other sources of joy. Now, some of you are like, Jeff, you're getting all scientific, PhDs doing their clinical research. I'm not, that sophisticated type. All right, let's talk football. Go Bears, huh? It's been quite a season, and there are some, and I'll add my voice to it, this season with the strong defense is reminding me in many ways of the '85 Bears. Let's put them up here. We got a lot of young people here who are just going to have to trust me on this. There was a day when Chicago had a Super Bowl champion team. The '85 Bears were amazing. I was a teenager at the time, and I remember it so well. This particular picture, get this, all right? This picture was taken 2 months ahead of the Super Bowl when they recorded a video song in celebration of the Super Bowl victory, promising Chicago a Super Bowl champion team. I mean, it was 7 games away from that victory, and yet they did. And the name of this song was? I'm not the only old guy in the house, that's right. The Super Bowl Shuffle. They danced and they celebrated as if it was already here. That's the thrill of hope. Do you get it? Nobody argued, or at least I didn't argue with them at the time. When they said, we're going to bring it, I was like, yeah, they are, which is ridiculous because they had been so bad for so long. I mean, the Bears had never been to a Super Bowl before. And for decades of poor playing, suddenly we knew that hope had arrived. And when they said it was going to happen, it was going to happen. And as a young man, I did the Super Bowl Shuffle. I felt the joy in the present through the anticipation of coming victory. Friends, as Christians, we should be doing the Super Bowl Shuffle every day of our lives. We know how the game ends. We know how the story ends. We are part of this glorious rescue that God is bringing about. And though the events of our lives today are confusing and don't really make sense, we trust that the great God who's authoring all has a plan. And as it's worked out towards the end, we'll say, I see what you were doing in me. I see what you were doing through me. Oh, Lord. So, friends, we got to do the Super Bowl Shuffle. Well, I want to give you one more quote. Another movie series that I enjoyed and a book series that I read is The Lord of the Rings. Some of you know it. And there was a guy named Frodo who said this to a friend. He and his friend were caught up in quite an adventure, but where it was going was unclear. And so he asked, I wonder what sort of tale we have fallen into. Isn't that a great statement? Frodo knew that some tales just end wondrously, surprisingly, things turn and have just a glorious, and others end tragically. And Frodo said, I wonder what kind of a story we're living. It's a good question. And I suppose it's important for me to acknowledge that not all stories end in triumph. Some end in tragedy. The question is whether or not you're reconciled with God. Those who are right with their Maker should be people of hope and enjoy the thrill of hope. Those who are alienated from their Maker have no reason for hope until they take care of that spiritual problem. And what's great is that the one that we need reconciliation with has provided a way for us to be reconciled. He's got a plan. He's laid out a means by which we can get right with God. And his plan is the Christmas child. His plan is Jesus Christ, the rescuer of humanity. Jesus came, God in the flesh, to take on the sin of the world into his body and to die on the cross, paying our penalty on our behalf so we can be made right and forgiven because of what he has done. Now, most people say, don't need it. I'll take care of myself. Don't need a rescuer. Most people think that if I live a good life, if I am morally at least better than most, if I can be religious in enough ways, that God will let me in, it'll all work out in the end, and I'm sure I'll impress him enough. Bad plan. According to the Bible, there is no hope in anybody who thinks that through my efforts I can impress God. In fact, the only plan that works is the opposite of that one, coming to a place of recognizing that I have nothing about me that's sufficient to impress God and earn by my own merits a place in heaven. In fact, instead, I am abandoning all hope of impressing God and turning my only hope into Jesus Christ, saying, Jesus, you better save me or I'm out of luck. And those who turn to the Christmas child, Jesus, and say, I'm trusting you to apply what you did on the cross to my life, forgive my sin, take my broken life and lead me on, those people in that moment, see, this happens in an instant. You talk about a Christmas present as a gift. In a moment of prayer, you can be reconciled with God. And when you do, in that instant, you went from a story of tragedy to a story of triumph. And so I just got to challenge you with all the sincerity I can muster. Get right with your Maker. Friends, before this day ends, do business with God. Maybe it's during a song towards the end of this service where you just say, oh, Lord, what am I thinking? I need the Christmas Savior badly. And you cry out in that silent prayer, and in that moment, you are transferred into God's family. Or maybe it's out in the car as you leave tonight. You just sit in the car, grab that steering wheel, bow your head, and trust Christ. Or maybe it's in bed tonight as you stare at the ceiling. But before the day ends, get right with your God. And then when you do, actually, this gift is for everybody. So as you leave, you're going to be given a Christmas card. And then in the Christmas card is an ornament. It says hope on it. Believe it or not, a group of people in our church made these by hand. The whole thing is made by hand. 4,000 of these ornaments they put together. And you'll see they made them not in Christmas colors, the thought being you can put it on your tree, but if you want to display it after Christmas as a reminder, it'll look appropriate to do that. I challenge you, if you make this day your moment of getting right with the Lord, on the back of this ornament with a permanent marker, write the date. Let this be a memento of the most important day of your life. Or maybe this isn't the moment you get right with God, but God is doing something in your heart, and you just want to write what he's doing and put the date down as a remembrance as to this moment. But I'm praying that we can all get on the path of hope by connecting with the Christmas child. All right, let me close with these words. Friends, praise God we live in Chicagoland, where it gets bitter cold. Think of these poor saps who live in these sunshiny states where it's hot all year long and they don't have any noticeable seasons. Because seasons preach. Do you know that? God preaches through the seasons. In fact, the scriptures call us to observe the dynamics of the seasons as God's trying to communicate something to us. He's trying to communicate hope. He's saying, look at those trees who lose their leaves in the fall and look like pictures of death as the ice and snow move in. But anticipate with great joy what you know is going to happen, and that is that the growing sun will thaw the deep frost and melt the ice and bring a rebirth as the grass turns green and as the leaves burst forth and as the flowers come into bloom in the glorious spring. God made the seasons to teach us what our life looks like. He says, I know you were born into a winter, but let me remind you, the sun, the invincible birth of the sun has come, and the rescue is underway, and hope should reign in your heart. In fact, I pray, may all of you be like a tree that valiantly, triumphantly survives the winter and bursts forth in new delight and life in anticipation of the spring. I've always loved trees. I love this tree in our front yard. I love seeing the kids climb in its branches. We enjoy the shade and the heat of the summer. I love the fall when the leaves turn color. And then even in the winter, watching the snow as it clings to the branches. It's just a great tree. It's an old tree. It's got to be 77 years old. That's how old our house is. And I'm imagining that the family that originally built the house, they also planted the tree. It wasn't much back then, but today it's awesome. I guess that's why I got excited when my wife asked me if I would plant a tree. She said that a friend had given her a tree as a gift. And I was like, yeah, I'll plant it. Show me, where is it? She said, well, it's coming in the mail. Like, what? How could a tree come in the mail? A big tree? Well, turns out it wasn't much of a big tree. It's hard to imagine, isn't it, that this little guy is going to become a mighty tree someday. You know, I'm just hoping he can survive the winter. Can you imagine soon the leaves are going to all fall and then the snow? I mean, he's going to be buried in the snow. And yet he'll make it. He'll make it to spring. God has made trees to go dormant. In fact, some trees actually need the harshness of winter to thrive into all that they were intended to be. And so the story of this little tree is not over yet. And neither is your story. My friend, maybe you feel like this tree. You feel too weak. You feel like the circumstances of your life are just overwhelming you. Well, hang in there, because your story, well, the best is yet to come. The God of seasons, He's going to bring the spring into your life.